play. An heir of the dream clings to the place, a dream rising out of reality. Willie Loman, a struggling father and prideful salesman, feels as though he is a shell of the man he used to be. To cope with this harsh truth, he idealizes the past. This tragic flaw is echoed in many works of literature, such as The Great Gatsby and the Iliad. Although Willie's dreams help him survive, even this is a facade because his dreams lead to his downfall. Willie's idealism is a survival mechanism. He created this fantasy of the world he wants to live in to cope with his financial and relationship troubles. He feels powerless and he clings to an idealized version of his life to maintain his pride. Ultimately, he realizes that his reality, his marginal success, and the fact that his pride prevents him from providing for his family cannot live up to his fantasy of being well liked and successful. This realization shatters his world. Believing his only contribution to his family is money, he takes his own life so his family can get insurance money. Willie's longing for an idealization of the past is his tragic flaw because it creates an unrealistic standard he cannot meet. Willie tells Biff, the man who makes an appearance in the business world, the man who creates personal interest, is the man who gets ahead. Be liked and you will never want. Willie no longer receives validation. Biff realizes Willie isn't the hero he imagined him to be because of his affair, and Charlie pities Willie so much that he just gives him money so that Willie can continue lying to Linda by insisting that he is successful. Since external validation fuels his fantasy that he is well liked, Willie's entire spirit, motivation, and last shred of dignity dissipate when other people lose respect for him. The title of Willie Loman's closest enabler and the biggest culprit in his false ideology belongs to his wife, Linda. Linda pities, enables, and tolerates her husband's idealism, which is self-destructive, masquerading as self-recovering behavior. I don't say he's a great man. Willie Loman never made a lot of money. His name was never in the paper. He's not the finest character that ever lived, but he's a human being, and a terrible thing is happening to him, so attention must be paid. Willie's tendency to obsess over the past prevents him from living a fulfilling life with his sons and Linda. She believes that Willie is a ticking time bomb. He cannot survive without reconstructing his life around him to fit his narrative of being well-liked. During each of his suicide attempts, Linda treats him with more caution and pity than before, reflecting her coping mechanism for handling a fragile creature such as Willie. She is terrified that Willie will explode when he realizes that his reality is different from his perception. Therefore, she goes to great lengths, even isolating her sons, to protect Willie and his fragile dreams. Linda serves as a warning for a dream deferred. Willie's suicidal tendencies fester like a sore in his life, but his behavior also infects his loved ones. Authors often use tragic heroes to convey major themes in their stories. For instance, in Homer's The Iliad, Achilles is a tragic hero whose flaw is pride. Although Willie's flaw is his idealism, he uses his dreams to hang on to his last shred of dignity. Additionally, in The Great Gatsby, Jay Gatsby's tragic flaw is the same as Willie's, obsessing over the past. Similar to most great tragedies, Willie's death is foreshadowed through dialogue. Linda pleads with Biff to respect Willie because he's not allowed to fall into his grave like an old dog. Yet, this is exactly what occurs. Others cannot save Willie from himself. By using Willie Loman to convey the epitome of a tragic hero, Arthur Miller demonstrates an important lesson. The things we love and cling to the most destroy us. Willie is attached to his dreams, and although he uses them to help him survive, they eventually cause his downfall. Not only is idealism his tragic flaw, but his wild imagination leaves a trail of his loved ones. Willie's death is both meaningless and meaningful. Linda pays off the house and doesn't need Willie's insurance money to do so, but his death serves as a warning to the audience not to let their dreams get the best of them. Thank you.
Good Good evening, everyone. My name is Andrew DeRose. Uh, I run my school's programming club, and I'm also a big history buff, which is going to become very apparent in my essay. So I hope you guys enjoy that. By the dawn of the 20th century, the Industrial Revolution was in full swing across the Western world. Throughout the following decades, unprecedented growth would allow the United States to enter the Roaring Twenties, and its citizens enjoyed a period of previously unknown prosperity. Trademarked by opulent parties, a breakdown of social norms, and wealth in every home, the Roaring Twenties embodied the spirit of the American dream. Everyone could be lavishly rich, and the stock market provided plenty of opportunity to go around. Unfortunately, this did not hold true for the majority of Americans. Despite an increase in wealth in every household, mostly due to low-cost goods, working-class Americans were still being abused in horrific working conditions everywhere, especially in the cities. This pattern of the rich increasing their wealth during the Industrial Revolution was repeated across the globe as it became even easier to exploit the common man. However, America was different. Across Europe, especially in the East, worker uprisings were prevalent in every nation. Russia had the communist revolutions, France had the French Revolution, Italy, Germany, Austria, all were affected nations. Unhappy working class people rose up against the plutocracy they so despised. And yet in America, there was no revolution like there was in Europe. The working conditions were exactly the same, and the same people were oppressed. Still, there was little immediate action. The reason for this is the American dream. Despite the word being in the name, few people understand just how uniquely American the dream is. Communist movements never took hold in the United States for a simple reason. The American people all believed they were one of a kind, and that they would be the next Rockefeller or Carnegie. This individuality led to trademark American ideals, such as the nuclear family. This notion of unique identity is central to the death of a salesman. Willy Loman is arguably the paragon of the American dream. He has everything that was and is romanticized in American society. He has the ideal nuclear family with 2 sons, one a former high school football star. He has the devoted wife who cares for the house that Willie alone pays the bills for as the sole breadwinner. He has a car, lives in the suburbs, and drives to work. He lives the life that many in American literature desire so dearly. Characters such as Big Walter from A Raisin in the Sun died so his family could live a life like Willie's. And still, to much of society, Willie is unsuccessful. He is poor, unhappy, and disliked. It is not enough to say that Willie is unsuccessful simply because he earns no money. His struggles lie beyond his income. Willy Loman is foundering because of his flawed idea of success. A stark contrast to Willie is Jay Gatsby from The Great Gatsby. Both operating during the 1920s, Jay Gatsby managed to take advantage of the opportunities of his time and amasses an immense fortune. Gatsby took initiative for himself and became successful because of it. All of his success was based on being his own boss and taking charge for what he wants. The idea of Gatsby is present in The Death of the Salesman through the character of Ben Loman. Ben, like Gatsby, is self-made, even if done through shady means. Unlike Willie, Ben seeks success through his own initiative and working for himself. When I was 17, I walked into the jungle, and when I was 21, I walked out, and by God, I was rich. This is where Willy Loman falls flat. His every concept of success has been based solely on the belief that he is truly distinct. Throughout Biff's childhood, Willie repeatedly tells him that his personality is what will garner him an advantage. Be liked and you will never want. Furthermore, he also says to him, Bernard can get the best marks in school, you understand, but when he gets out in the business world, you understand, you are going to be 5 times ahead of him. Willie never factors in that you cannot sit idly by and wait for success, and that charisma alone will not do anything for either Biff or Willie. This belief that charm will do all the work for the Loman family is so deeply rooted in Willie's head that it is beyond his understanding how Bernard, who he sees as having an uninteresting personality, ended up as a successful lawyer, and as he is repeatedly dumbfounded by tales of his success. This is the tragedy that is the wife of Willy Loman, similar to many other like-minded Americans. Willie believed there was bound to be some big breakthrough coming to him and his family. There will be no such breakthrough for Willy Loman, and this is due solely to the fact that Willie is not an interesting man. He is ordinary, the poster child for the nuclear family. There is nothing that makes him stand out from every other American. His dreams of grandeur are nothing but delusions. He believes his personality, not hard work, will bring him the silk stocking life that he so dreams of, and yet he has not realized that he does not stand out. It is It is this delusional version of the American dream that prompts him to deny Charlie's offer of a job, as he does not want to work for Charlie. It's too embarrassing. The irony of this is not that Charlie already pays him weekly so he can sham to Linda that he is making money. Instead, it is that working for Charlie would be no different than working under Howard Wagner. At the end of the day, he is working not for himself, but for some corporation. But to Willie, he does not want to give up his job as a salesman because he sees it as he is working with himself as a boss. Slowly throughout the play, it does begin to occur to Willie that he is running out of time, and so far he has amounted to nothing more than an ordinary, if not subpar, salesman. He tells Happy that the woods are burning after Happy suggests that he can retire his father, which Willie knows will not happen because he is beginning to understand that Happy is not destined to make large amounts of money. Ultimately, it does dawn onto Willie that he is fated to be ordinary, and his American dream was an illusion. He finally learns that what he thought to be his defining feature, his personality, is not even likable. Therefore, he decides his best course of action is unfortunately suicide, simply to bring material wealth to his family through life insurance, which he has ironically sought his entire life. Willie was never going to find an out for the hole he dug himself into, for he failed to recognize his dire situation until the very end. While it holds true that Willie's delusional view on how the world worked held his family down in poverty, he's not at fault. He was enchanted by the false hope given by his version of the American dream, and because of that, he believed that he was inherently different from everyone else, him and his family. He wanted the best for his sons, especially Biff, and yet he failed in giving him proper advice on how to win at life because he did not know either. Despite being ordinary himself, Willie believed that only an extraordinary life would suit himself and his sons, which never came to fruition, which drove Willie to suicide. This is the unattainable ambition the death of the salesman serves to warn against, chasing a delusion that is not right for your true self. Thank you.
Hello. I'm Thaddeus Jones, and among other things, I'm involved in the Alvernian Theater Society at St. Francis Prep, and then I'm also a member of our school's track and field and cross country teams. Between two intersections on 99th Avenue in Queens Village, there lies a bridge. Under this bridge, between the intersections of 211th Street and 211th Place, across the street from Skinner's Pest Control, a brave soul has spray painted the words, questioning the American dream. Modern living is something of a rat race, every man blind in pursuit of a dream so alluring that no man pauses to question whether the American dream is his own dream. American success and how it's measured permeates the plot of Arthur Miller's great American play, Death of a Salesman. Willie Loman's brother, Ben, is the epitome of the great American businessman. Throughout the story, although Willie never pauses to question it, Miller's audience catches on to the dramatic glorification of manhood and success represented by Ben's character. While Willie embodies the struggles and failures of a man consumed by his quest for success, Ben represents the idealized version of achievement and wealth that Willie so desperately longs for. Through their interactions and their differing paths, Ben is juxtaposed to Willie, accentuating Willie's insecurities and the dark side of the American dream. At the intersection of affluence and want, there lies a salesman, Willie, in his humble abode. His lifestyle is that of the quintessential American businessman. His funds, however, are wrought not through hard work and lucrative business ventures, but instead supplemented by the benevolence of his friend and neighbor, Charlie. Charlie and Willie live parallel lives, Charlie acting as an incarnation of Willie's what-ifs. What if he had never taken an interest in anything? What if his imagined prowess as a salesman was his reality? What if he had curbed his delusions of grandeur and taught his sons to do likewise? What if he was a real family man and concentrated his energies on their well-being? What if he truly was well-liked? From the time Willie's brother Ben is introduced, his presence and absence from Willie's life call to attention a weighty what if. What if Willie had accompanied Ben on his business ventures to Alaska? The stage directions upon Ben's entrance characterize him as a man with an aura of far places about him. and Miller's audience senses the triple entendre. Sorry, I need to blow my nose. Thank you. No. Okay. Where were we? Okay. What if Willie had accompanied Ben on his business ventures to Alaska? The stage directions upon Ben's entrance characterize him as a man with an aura of far places about him, and Miller's audience senses the triple entendre. He quite literally travels to far places. He's experienced and has the discernment of a man who has traveled far and has gone far in life. And he has many sons and has left them all with massive inheritances upon his decease. The last point is Willie's way of measuring manhood, the products of your life. Willie understands cash generated to be these quantitative products and dismisses the value of the work of your hands, capturing the zeitgeist of the period. A man has to have business acumen to get ahead of the next fella, as Biff rightly surmises. Ben acts as a guide for Willie, as literary characters who died with unfinished business often do. He calls to attention qualities Willie lacks that accentuate his permanent station, that of a low man. Ben's grandeur is demonstrated through his impressive memory of his business dealings, never having written them down, and further by his advice to Biff, never fight fair with a stranger. Willie's life never amounts to anything, and he attributes it to his declining of the aforementioned Alaskan opportunity, living in the regret of a road not taken. His unfinished business with a deceased Ben torments him, and having missed one opportunity, he relegates himself to his rank as the world's retainer, never running after another risk. With no risk, there is consequently no reward, and Ben again serves to highlight this point. Willie idolizes Ben, but it's clear Ben's business ventures are shady and unsavory. He is not an honest man. Despite his fallacy, the palpable achievement that Willie feels makes a man is a result of Ben's willingness to do whatever he needs to do to succeed. True success comes from knowing one's strengths and playing to them. Willie was good with his hands. That was his strength. Putting up ceilings and constructing stoops are honest, valuable skills. Even Willie is aware. Spitting, "You're disgusting," in response to Charlie's ineptitude with tools. Despite this knowledge and his dearth of shrewdness when it comes to business, he persists in his sales. Linda laments after his death, "He was so good with his hands." Biff replies in agreement that his father had had all the wrong dreams and never stopped to question whether they were his own. It takes a great kind of man to craft the jungle, not a low man. Way leads on to way, and the adrift man finds himself lost. Two roads diverged in a wood, but for Willie Loman, there was no hope at all, as all around the woods were burning.
My name is Angela Morales, and I play guitar in Prep's jazz band. Out of all the characters in Death of a Salesman, one of the least conspicuous is Willie's friend Charlie. Although only appearing for brief moments throughout the play, he has an important role as a foil for Willie. It is Charlie's presence that serves as further characterization of Willie, their contrasting natures making their own respective traits more apparent. Charlie is the American dream done right, and this picture of accomplishment is material for the delusion Willie feeds into. While their two personalities clash, at the root of it, Charlie does empathize with his friend, and those moments of care call attention to the state of turmoil and regret Willie Loman has driven himself into. The American dream is a notable theme in Death of a Salesman. Willie is excessively occupied by his dream of being a well-known, well-liked salesman, and achieving that reality independently. This insistence on self-reliance repeatedly keeps him from accepting a job from Charlie, who by contrast is successful in his area of work. He has his own office with a secretary and is financially secure enough to give Willie money weekly. Although Charlie is genuinely trying to help Willie with the job offer, he refuses, still loyal to his dream. To quote Willie, "I always felt that if a man was impressive and well-liked, that nothing," which Charlie cuts off with, "Why must everybody like you?" He raises an important question, one that contradicts Willie's expectations of himself. It displays his infatuation with the ideas of others' attention and approval. Charlie does not share this feeling. To quote him again, "My salvation is that I never took an interest in anything." It should be noted that this is said in the context of their parenting, which brings up another difference between them, their effect on their sons. Bernard is like his father Charlie, successful in his own walk of life, growing up to be a lawyer speaking in front of the Supreme Court. When the audience sees him as an adult, he is described as, quote, "a quiet, earnest, but self-assured young man." Willie's desperation for achievement, in this case as a parent, is only emphasized when he asks Bernard, "What's the secret?" He knows that he has failed Biff as a parent, both in raising his ego as a child and in scarring him by being caught with a mistress in Boston, the latter starting the domino effect of events that ruined his life. When Charlie enters, there is further reminder of the contrast between the effects of their parenting. Bernard gives no indication that he's appearing in front of the Supreme Court until Charlie mentions it. When Willie asks why that is, Charlie simply replies, "You don't have to. He's going to do it." Willie does a lot of talking, which makes sense because he believes that a man should be well liked, that words will do the work and build charisma. He even states this himself. "I can't stop myself. I talk too much. A man ought to come in with a few words. One thing about Charlie, he's a man of few words, and they respect him." This comparison is a nod at their success levels and where their distinct approaches to life have landed them. Although these two have their differences, they are still friends, and Charlie does care for Willie. There's the aforementioned job offer, plus Charlie's weekly loan so Willie can convince his wife he's still earning a paycheck. Even right after they're at each other's throats, yelling over the offer, Charlie calms himself and kindly asks Willie how much money he needs. He admits, "I know you don't like me, and nobody can say I'm in love with you, but I'll give you a job because, just for the hell of it, put it that way." They're not close, but there is a baseline of empathy here. At Willie's funeral, Charlie tells Biff that dreaming comes with the territory of being a salesman. He doesn't blame Willie for having dreams. He may get frustrated for the qualities Willie has developed because of it, but ultimately he is understanding of the situation and tries to support him. There are several facets to Charlie's character, each highlighting those of Willie's. He embodies the victorious American dream, the head of his own business with a family that has successes of their own. Bernard is an accomplished lawyer, though Charlie did not spend his childhood talking him or himself up the way Willie did with Biff. Despite their opposing qualities, they have maintained a relationship over the years, with Charlie displaying his consideration for Willie with each dollar he loans. Though there is a wall of pride and stubbornness between them, Charlie really is a friend to Willie, his only friend. And as Willie puts it, that is a remarkable thing.
My name is Malia Osalmo. I am the senior captain of the STEP team at St. Francis Prep, and this is my essay. Everything must go according to plan. Everything must be perfect. In life, standards find themselves finding seats next to ambitious human beings, waiting for them to one day fill their position. They appear in the academic, occupational, interpersonal parts of life that dictate who we are and what we believe we amount to. As an advocate for realism, Arthur Miller upheld most of his characters to a certain standard. In his marvelous work, Death of a Salesman, Miller employs the American dream, but beyond that dream is the humbling acceptance of reality. Dreams set a standard that sometimes do not manifest in our lives as we desire. If a star always granted a wish, there would not be much growth in our individual lives. Our response to said standards becomes vital to our own identity, how we perceive others, and what we choose to do about who we are and who we will always be. Miller provides Willie Loman with the standard for success, Linda Loman with the standard for saving others, to demonstrate how expectations set intrude on self-identity and value. Some dream of doing what they have always been passionate about. However, money does not always agree with passion. Passions themselves can be valued based on the amount of money they bring. Many young Americans during the 1940s had to compromise their strong suits and passions for a desired abundance. Willie was granted the dream of being an amazing salesman, with the intention of one day becoming one of the greatest alive. Of course, Willie takes trips to his past, convinced his career has amounted to greatness. Particularly, Willie has a distinctive nature to become immersed in this dream that belonged to him, but was not necessarily for him. So much so, a respected salesman, Charlie, says to him, "The only thing you've got in this world is what you can sell. And the funny thing is that you're a salesman and you don't know that." Willie has big dreams to provide for his family and create a network of people who love and remember his name through selling. Tragically, Willie denies his failure to uphold his standard of success, and he tends to meditate on every flaw in his life. He consistently pushes his sons to gain a remarkable job, being remarkable men with a remarkable reputation in this world. And never seeing his assets as enough, his dreams eventually lead him to be unfaithful to his wife and family on a work trip. In doing so, he still attempts to establish himself to a false standard where he preaches that a man who can't handle tools is not a man. As Willie is good with his hands, he fails to remember and respect the life he already has set for himself. While it does not look as he envisioned, he unfortunately continues to grow old for the dream, sabotaging his identity through pride and utter disappointment. As Willie sets the tone for his family by instituting standards directly and indirectly for them, his loved ones develop their own identities based on his actions. Miller creates the loving, nurturing Linda Lohman for Willie's companionship. Linda is extremely mindful and sincere when it comes to the care of her husband, and she does so with no expectation of reciprocation. The reason being is because she has put it upon herself to save Willie from himself. She is described to have infinite patience and has such patience for Willie, even when he fails to do the same for himself. Even as he continues to hurt himself and his sons reiterate this, she never fails to say that attention must be paid. Attention must be paid to both Willie's failures and his accomplishments. She sticks beside him dearly until his last days, where though Willie never realized he made such an impact, she faithfully recognizes that he was so wonderful with his hands. As Linda may have never felt that her work was done in saving her husband, her response always demonstrates that the consistent belief she had in him and her family, which became her identity, that she was always willing to accept. As dreams find us, we do not always find them. The loyalty to the standard, or lack thereof, can be what deciphers our loyalty to ourselves and others. The response can be the difference between a planted tree and a starving root. A realist like Arthur Miller would never fail to demonstrate the hidden pocket of growth that is always available, even when space is limited. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Maximilian Romno. I'm a senior at St. Francis Prep. I'm the co-president of my school's creative writing club. This is my essay. Sorry, I'm reading off my phone. Life has often been defined as a series of choices. At many points throughout one's existence, they must make choices that determine the way they will live their lives. As we grow up, we are compelled to define ourselves, leaving the nest, so to speak. And one of the most important parts of defining oneself is this fundamental choice. Will you follow in the footsteps of those before you, or forge your own path? All people must reckon with this decision, and ultimately choose whether they want to maintain tradition or break from it. In his 1949 play, Death of a Salesman, Arthur Miller introduces us to Willie Loman, a man who has fiercely pursued conformity, living his life according to a specific American ideal of success. Through the dialogue and imaginings that litter the play, we see that Willie envisioned a clear path through life, one where he was a successful, well-liked salesman, a respected man of his community and line of work, with a loving wife and a football star son. Willie's motivation reflects an idyllic view of success and masculinity in the mid-20th century, one where a man goes off to work, for someone else, of course, and ultimately triumphs and gains respect through what is described as pure, honest hard work. The male middle-class worker was sold a prospect of fortune, a false belief that simply working all your life would be enough to accomplish all you desired. At the same time, these men were expected to uphold strict social standards, modeling a restrictive idea of masculinity and security for those around them. In short, men like Willie were at the same time charged with pushing ahead and maintaining their social facade. This is a clearly contradictory idea, as no one can truly live for themselves while attempting to force that life into a socially acceptable standard. This is where Willie falters, adhering to this rigid idea of how things are supposed to be, symbolizing an older, more traditional idea of the supposed American dream. Death of a Salesman is a tragedy, of course, and the tragic flaw of its protagonist is that he clings to an antiquated ideal. This rigidity and harsh expectation is reflected in Willie's treatment of his two sons. At the beginning of the play, Biff, the eldest, has recently come home from a job as a ranch hand out west. Willie repeatedly argues with Biff about his choices, berating him for not having what he sees as a real, respectable job. Willie ignores that forging his own path is what makes Biff happy, instead forcing his flawed idea of success onto Biff. Willie simply cannot fathom that he might not meet society's expectations, and that personal success does not need to be viewed as such by everyone else. In this way, Willie alienates himself from his son. He believes that forcing Biff to fit the mold will bring him success, not realizing that his current struggles are the result of the exact same thing. Willie is not just a part of the cycle, he is the cycle, a toxic manifestation of America's crushing conformity. The cycle of breaking away from your predecessors and defining yourself independently is a prevalent theme throughout all storytelling, even dating back to ancient Greece, where the theatrical tragedy was born. In the origin story of Greek mythology, there is a cycle of men killing their fathers, symbolically and literally breaking from the established order. The Titan Kronos killed his father Uranus, assuming control of the universe until he was similarly overthrown by Zeus, the king of the Greek gods. Similar patterns are found in modern media, such as the Star Wars films. The central conflict of George Lucas's original trilogy is protagonist Luke Skywalker's relationship with his father, the villainous Sith Lord Darth Vader. Throughout Luke's journey, both Vader and the series' main antagonist, Emperor Palpatine, attempt to convince Luke that he will ultimately fall into the cycle, killing his father and assuming the mantle of evil. Luke sees the ills of his father and himself, but rather than falling in line, he ultimately chooses to break the cycle of destruction, tracing his own path away from what destiny and tradition have supposedly dictated for him. Willie Loman attempts to live up to his ideal vicariously through Biff, who he believes must obtain a typical job and attain traditional success, even if it makes him unhappy. Willie even gives the ultimate sacrifice of his own life in an attempt to give Biff the sort of position he dreamed of. This bleak scenario can hardly even be described as symbolic. Willie literally kills himself for money. After Willie's death, we are shown two different choices between Biff and his brother Happy. Biff chooses not to become a salesman and to follow his own destiny, living out a legitimate dream in a way his father never could. Conversely, Happy decides that he will continue Willie's dream, continuing the cycle set up ages ago. The American dream that Arthur Miller sought to debunk in Death of a Salesman still exists, but it has been obscured by the haze of tradition, conformity, and idealism. America was founded on the concept of liberty, with our founding fathers breaking free from the established order. Unfortunately, we have failed to live up to this dream. Instead of reinventing ourselves, we grasp the stability and order, counteracting the fundamental process of the dream we so desperately seek. Herein lies the true tragedy of Death of a Salesman. The Biffs of the world will forge their paths of happiness, living out the true American dream, while the Happies will continue to follow blindly and unquestioningly, falling victim to the same vicious cycle that claimed those before them. Only by disowning the American dream can we see it truly come to fruition. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Julian Smith. And one thing about me, English related, I guess, is I love to annotate and analyze songs that I like, because I think it's like a great gateway into like poetry and everything that we do in school. Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman has, as we all know, a bit of everything: an abundance of lost, deferred dreams that fester into delusion, and the ensemble of effects that emanate from these agents of devastation that all culminate in a complex tragedy. Though something often overshadowed by other themes, how exactly does the Loman family stoop to such deep valleys of shame? What allows or even fosters the degeneration of what was once a family with such potent and seemingly attainable ambitions? Society is the culprit. Society nurtures his dysfunctional bastards through his cycle of abandonment, keeping the Lomans trapped in no more than daydream, a false sense of hope and security. The beginning of the play already lulls us into this dream, or rather, nightmare, that Willie and Linda have been facing for years. To his company, Willie is nothing more than a mule, yet he is somehow convinced that he is vital to the operations of the business. This guarded confidence in his importance results in a pompous attitude that reveals itself when Willie speaks to Biff. Here lies the cycle of abandonment. Since his company, and by proxy society, have no use for Willie, he projects his insecurities onto Biff, believing that his son should be a better man than he ever was, a more successful salesman, even though it is obvious to Willie's failures that it is a dying craft. This division in ideals results in conflict between Willie and Biff that leads to the latter seeking to form a business with his brother Happy to free himself from his father's unsavory legacy. It is here in the second half of the play where, as evident as the societal justice is already, it fully rears its ugly face. Miller's belief that the common man is as apt a subject for tragedy in its high sense as kings were is best reflected here. As the common man is much less socially important than the king, society is able to make a tragedy out of any layman or lowman by simply ignoring his illegitimates or even leading them down the wrong path, as seen in Happy and Biff's case. The misguided, desperate belief that they and the rest of their family place in this business idea leads to the rejection that Biff ultimately faces being ever more potent. He finally realizes how his family has been led on and manipulated by society, even telling his brother that they've been talking in a dream for 15 years, though his realization comes far too late for the family, as their final aspirations for something grander had already been crushed. Such is the tragedy of Willie Loman, who, upon discovering that everything he had painstakingly worked for and tried to build up was just another lie told by society, sees no other route for the family than to kill himself for the money. No one is without a mask in this grand masquerade that ultimately leads to the death of Willie Loman. Yet society makes no effort to maintain its constantly utilized charade at the funeral of one of his poorest bastards. For being well-liked, it should be odd that there were close to no guests, though his friends were merely societal solicitors who stepped on Willie's back to selfishly move themselves up in life. No one but his family and Charlie, a rare altruistic supporter of his, show up. Charlie's persistently offered beacon of help, shining like the brightest of suns, is eclipsed by a great mood of pomp that Willie accumulated from constantly being misled by the false affirmations of his peers. The only chance Willie had for liberation from the mental and physical shackles of society is ruined by the shame he believed he would face if he kept relying on Charlie's assistance. When you look at Death of a Salesman as a story of a family who suffered the many pitfalls of society, the tragedy of the play becomes all the more apparent. While the Loman's dreams were ultimately unattainable, the proprietor and insurer of those false dreams was society. Where would the Lomans be if they simply had more backing or more compassion shown to them? Would they have everything they ever needed? As Willie says, be liked and you will never want. One key component is missing though, the needs. The needs are the things that keep us up at night. The needs are what drives us. The needs can ultimately kill us in our dreams, and there lies the tragedy of one Willie Loman.
Hi, my name is Kendra Williams, and I play piano in our school's jazz band. Here's Matt. American prosperity is rooted in the prospect of dreams. The key to success lies in diligence and ambition, fueling the necessary actions to achieve it. However, despite its familiarity, the American dream is not guaranteed. The American dream, arguably one of modern history's most conspicuous phrases of national ethos, is no more a realizable aspiration than a non-viable fantasy. For those such as Willie Loman and Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman, who bask in superficiality rather than strive for eminence, that dream remains untouched. Sacrificing one's sanity to obtain a slither of the American dream. When does a dream become a nightmare? Unfortunately, to relive the excruciating agony of mediocrity and denial is not in pursuit of the American dream, no matter how ingrained the correlation between struggle and reward may be. But for Willie Loman, the anguish of mundanity is mistaken for the unfulfilled eagerness of hereafter possibilities. Willie Loman's desire to dream evolved into a parasitic hindrance to his ambitions towards a quintessential life. Rather than reaching his full potential, Willie's progress was halted by a withering dream that ruptured into a gaping hole, capable of draining the wits of anyone disillusioned enough to reach the point of no return. Prior to his death, Willie Loman says, "Oh, I'd better hurry. I've got to get some seeds. I've got to get some seeds right away. Nothing's planted. I don't have anything in the ground." After returning to his sensibilities, Willie continuously faces his misperceptions, steadily veering towards the realization that he is an unaccomplished man outside of the triviality and likability and dedication. Preaching to his sons a fabricated gospel, Willie physically witnesses the insignificance of his adored peripheral conventions in light of the actualization of the dreams of his neighbor Charlie and his son Bernard. Willie's psychological entrapment is perpetuated through his confinement to fantasizing the lore of his esteemed brother Ben, who, unlike Willie, sought to pursue his dreams rather than remain in complacency. Throughout the play, Ben is presented as a beacon of light in Willie's grim reality, serving as the image of success that Willie desperately wishes to attain. However, Ben's presence in the play is a facade, an ideation conjured by his disenchanted brother. Every instance wherein Willie whimsically returns to Ben draws his consciousness further away from reality, burying his soul deeper into an idle existence. In each journey to delirium, Willie further convinces himself of his contentment, rather than allowing him to face the despondence staring directly from within. Throughout the play, Willie consistently maintains a sense of failure, and with burgeoning consequences. Subconsciously aware he will inevitably be unable to reach his potential, he remains committed to the ideology that one can achieve any possibility with hard work and likability. His painful ignorance not only weighs on his psyche, but also proves to be an encumbrance on his relationships. Willie's misguided persistence builds rifts between him and his children, especially Biff, for whom Willie has grand ambitions. Unlike Willie and his brother, Happy, Biff Loman does not exist in perpetual disillusion. Biff is woefully aware of his incompetence and does not shadow his discontentment with fraudulent grins. Biff carries an insurmountable burden, not referring to his own shortcomings alone, but also regarding his witness of his father's mental decline, Happy's denial, and his mother's distress. Unfortunately, Biff is beset by the harrowing reality that his father is ill fit to manage. The over-idolized conception of the American dream extant in Willie's mind floods into the lives of his family, luring his relatives towards the darkness. For Willie Loman, his dream never ended, nor did it ever actualize. Remaining in eternal stagnance as the world passed him by, Loman failed to see outside of his restricted realm of thought. Like in the event horizon of a black hole, those existing within it are incapable of viewing the outer realm. Instead, those within the event horizon live stuck in time. In the miraculous scenario in which a person is freed from the event horizon, they return to a world where they've been left behind. Once Willie Loman releases himself from the psychological black hole encompassing his mind, he is unable to cope with his despair, ultimately driving him over the edge. Unfortunately, riding on a smile and a shoeshine is not the key to unlocking the American dream. According to Willie Loman's tale, dreaming possesses a degree of fatality with a grim potential to manifest physical cessation.
Questions.
I have a question. I'm sorry. First of all, really, highest appreciation for each one. My question is very vague, so if it rings true or something, please feel free to answer it. What would you say you've learned from Death of a Salesman from Arthur Miller about the themes of meritocracy, territorial and physical conquest of materialism, and communism?
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Maybe too big of a question, but in my mind I thought something. So I'll repeat it, and if it makes sense, what would you say Death of a Salesman has taught you or that you've learned about physical and material conquest, meritocracy, and communism?
So the way I see it, the sort of thing I was describing in my essay is, as an American, you're told to, get out there and take what's yours, which is kind of what America has always been doing. That's how this country was founded, by people coming here and taking what was theirs, And so you're expected to accumulate all these material possessions and work hard all your life, even though those things don't, like for Willie, that doesn't save him. He comes into this desert of a life where he just has nothing. He's worked hard, but ultimately it's an unattainable thing that he's reaching for, which is really like happiness, and happiness with who he is as a person. In regards to communism, he probably knows more about communism. I'm not a communist, though.
I don't think that Death of a Salesman is pro-communist. I think it kind of just, Arthur Miller is just very against like the current way American capitalism is set up, where you're told you're an individual, you're special, right? And while that's true, we all are different people. We're also not that different from one another. So when we're all told that there lies some high degree of success for all of us, Arthur Miller thinks that's a lie, and that we can just be ordinary people and live an ordinary life, and that's a beautiful thing. Really, Willy Loman could have had a great life. He could have provided for his family. He could have had the idea of family. As I said, he is the paragon of the American dream. He has everything except income, and that's why he's a failure. He's almost there, but he's not there. So I think Arthur Miller is more, he's not advocating for communism as in sharing resources, but I guess more similar to as you see in like East Asian societies, where people are very it's community. There's no really an individual. People work as a community, and that's why Arthur Miller was worried there would be poor reception of this play in China, because it's so very different from East Asian society, where they don't see you as an individual. You work together, and I think that's what, at least for the communist aspect.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to begin by reading two sentences. I'll make it short. Willie understands cash generated to be the qualitative products of manhood, and dismisses the value of the work of your hands, capturing the zeitgeist of the period. A man has to have business acumen to get ahead of the next fella, as Biff at least surmises. So basically, what I got from the question was that it came back to the letter from Arthur Miller that was shared in the beginning, and to the mention at the end of when all of our panel speakers were speaking of how teaching is the way to change the world, but also teaching is undervalued, and that's a career that nobody goes into. Sorry. I didn't mean to word it like that. I didn't mean to word it like that. But I hope you understand what I mean. Sorry. And in regards to that aspect, and how every man has to conquer his own like place in the world. And then those like physical, whether it's land, whether it's money, whether it's property acquired, those are the things that we consider like a measurable show of his manhood or of his success. Instead, we don't value the creation of things, which was a really big part of the letter that Arthur Miller was saying, how we pay people to amass things instead of to create things. And so I just think society's backward.
Well, two questions. The old conferences about Miller, we used to ask the question, what about the fact that Willie doesn't have a recognition the way you have in the Ancient Greek tragedy? So I was wondering how you guys respond to that. He never sees the light. And then the second question is, which values do you come away with having read the play? Because I always tell students that a great work of literature should teach you how to live life, either by negative or positive example.
Well, I like to think that Miller doesn't necessarily make it clear whether or not Willie dies, whether he dies disillusioned, or rather he dies like knowing that he's too far gone in this life to be able to save himself. It might have been a self-sacrificial move that he did in order to try to at least prosper Linda's chances at a better life, even if Biff and Happy, Biff is going off to try and build his own life, and Happy, even if he does take after his father, being a punching. I found it really funny, the punching bag like representing Happy, and that, because it's kind of accurate. He is a carbon copy of his father, and it ends up being that Happy really won't go anywhere in his life, so that life insurance money is going to be able to supplement Happy's meager existence. In regards to what I took away from the play for like approaching my own life, I feel that there's a lot of times when Willie is I made this analogy in a discussion the other day, but basically Willie is a seahorse. And why I say that he's a seahorse is because seahorses do not have they have really weak fins, and they're not able to swim against the current. They're not able to choose their direction. And he is clinging to this piece of kelp that that is in the ocean, so as not to get swept away by the current. And Charlie and Biff, hopefully, and Ben, they're all their own fish. They have fins, and they are able to navigate through the waters of life without being held back by the direction that the current is sweeping in. So the way I'm framing it, it's kind of like Willie had no choice, but obviously Willie pigeonholed himself into the situation of being a seahorse. But I like to think that the current he's holding off against is not like the societal belief that he needs to be a the societal belief that he should like actually put in hard work and become like the kind of salesman he wants to be, but rather that he's kind of like at the end stages of his life. And obviously the kelp is his past. It's everything that he's holding on to. And I feel that the current is more his resistance, even towards the end of his life. Like, I don't think he actually wants to kill himself, because I feel like he would have had it done by the time, like before the play started, maybe. If he was as intent on killing himself as some other people are. But that came out wrong too. But I feel that the current that he gets swept away by is actually his death, and that he ends up like he's resisting death because he wants to hold out for the hopes that while he's alive he can create a better life for his family. But I think he realizes that it's kind of too late for him, and who's to say whether or not it really is too late for him, but I really don't think he was changing because he didn't show a lot of potential for his character dynamic throughout the story. And he seems to have a realization of himself right before he commits suicide. And I feel that he finally lets that current sweep him away. So I hope you followed that analogy.
I first want to say there's like 8 people on this panel, and you all just did a marvelous job having a really like distinct perspective and voice. It was so unrepetitive. It wasn't like it was well liked. So that's my statement. My question is wholeheartedly, like in your opinions now, how would you? What are your opinions in terms of how Death of a Salesman can better resonate in classrooms and stages for you in the 21st century, like your generation? Like how can it come to us more powerfully from your perspectives?
I'll try and answer that question. I think that especially in this era, like the emphasis on physical wealth is just so great and you can't really avoid it. You see it everywhere you go. And I think that one of the things I wanted to say before is that my mom always tells me confidence is silent, but insecurity is loud. And I think that's one of the things you see in the play, that Bernard doesn't have to say anything that he's fighting in the Supreme Court, but Willie is constantly like complaining, but he's never taking actions. He's never taking actions to correct himself, to make better decisions. And like Bernard doesn't, I think he's such a great like foil for like Biff, but also Willie, because he takes those actions and he doesn't have to say that he's doing it. He doesn't have to be all showy. He doesn't have to show his physical wealth. He has that wealth within him, kind of. Yeah, I hope that answers.
If you don't mind me adding, I think that the play is just so timeless that, especially a lot of English and drama teachers, you do such a great job at incorporating lessons from our current age, like she said about materialism, and you see on social media, everyone is flaunting. And I think just about the play, they're so ambitious. And I like to say ambition is the human condition. For better or for worse, it's just there. And we'll strive for it. You'll see in Macbeth, you'll see in Gatsby, all these ambitious characters with no limit. And Willie had a semblance of ambition, and I think we all have a semblance of ambition, and that's why it's so easy to relate. And we see all these people around us, these pitfalls in society. Everyone fails, not everyone fails, but a lot of people fail in today's world. Entrepreneurs and business people. And I think the best way to relate, to get us to relate to this, is by bringing up these examples. That's really it.
Do you have any idea why Arthur Miller chose the name Logan?
Definitely. No okay. No long-winded marine biology analogies right now. But the reason he chose Loman, well, I mean, first off, it's in the name, Low Man, and I tried to reference that as many times as possible. I might have said it like 3 times in my essay, but I was trying to call attention. Also, Julian said like every lowman and layman in society, and that was really good. So honestly, the layman is a lowman. Like, we're talking about the common man, and at the end of the day, like I feel like recently, especially this is so relevant, but Liam Payne died, and a lot of people were calling, like, there were a lot of people who were really upset about his death and were posting about it and stuff. And then some people reposted this thing that was talking about how one person died here, but millions of people are dying in like Gaza and in the Middle East. And it was like, and what I got from that was less of like, it's all political, but more of it was that we place more value on certain human lives than on other human lives, and I feel like that is what he is really calling into he's really calling to attention when he calls Willie a low man, and yeah, I think that's it.
I come from a high school that Norman Lair went to and Louis Nye. One was a writer, one was a comedian. And I took the name Loman. And I don't know if Arthur Miller did it, but I think he might have, because he's a brilliant guy. If you spell it backwards, it's Lamo. It means sludge, mire, and mud. And I think he was trying to say it's America. Catch yourself out of the mud, catch yourself straight, let's have some justice. And let me tell you, Arthur Miller believed in justice. I think he was one of the 3 people in Roxbury that supported a young man who was accused of murder, of killing his mother. And Arthur Miller, Richard Widmark, and Walter Matthau, they got together and said, hey, there's been some mistakes here. They're trying to railroad this kid. So Arthur Miller and his group got that changed. You know, and it's kind of coincidental that the person that turned that around, his name was F. Gilroy Daley, and he became a judge. He became a U.S. Superior Judge. And the reason he became a judge is because he uncovered the proof that Peter Riley couldn't have killed his mother because they didn't have the evidence that should have been presented when they said Peter Riley's was witness coming out of the drive-in theater with his girlfriend at a certain time, and in order for Peter Riley to kill his mother, almost cut her head off, he would have had to go on 210 miles an hour. So he was innocent. So, Arthur Miller was really behind that. And I think this whole Death of a Salesman is about what you're talking about, equality and improving the country. And like you're saying, it's timely. It's timeless. Absolutely. You did a great job. I think you're wonderful.
These guys are great. I'll do it right, and then we're gonna move on to the last session presentation. Our residents.
Thanks. No. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm getting there.
Brag, and I found that people aren't that helpful, right? And so I feel really sad there because I kind of want to be like my daughter. I think it's always Are you ready for anything?
For a monologue, that's not really funny. You're always going to remember taking a risk and getting on stage and doing it. It's so easy to identify.
And then this needs to get reset, so let me.
I went to give you counting clients, like 25 times a day. So you're an agent, a little over
Yeah, that'd be great. And that way I can kind of do a little walking. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah. Great. Yeah, that's wonderful. I don't need to go far. Yeah, I just don't. And then I control yes, you can. I can always say next slide. But I'm happy to control it. So if I have to yes, wire in your way. So then what you will do is you're gonna go back and forth with me here, and then where's your video, and then yep, and then take out, and then slide here, and then excellent. Okay, beautiful. And you are okay controlling it here. Yeah. Then I'm gonna get out of your way, but I'm gonna sit close so I can hear like you're ready. There we go. That's all good. Great. Just hold your steps. Are you too? You're too low? Yes, you're cool. I'm gonna sit close. She wants to hear that. And I'm gonna be out of the way. Yeah. But I'm gonna sit close enough so there's any I can just run up. I don't have my water. But I'm gonna be close. If anything. Pleasure. My pleasure.
So
yeah, I'm very impressed already.
I'm sitting here, it was hard to not do it.
Yeah, he said it was the next one.
I still felt like everybody was I was kind of just sitting there and watching everybody wash hands and that's the best thing that I learned. I already like
I'm off the
everybody started laughing. After I realized I was I mean, smaller is older, that's huge. So we're the same breed who have biological needs. So I mean, that makes you human. And then makes you
Yeah. Oh, I'm excited. Congratulations. That's very exciting. And I feel like I think it was on part of the Joint Hospital. So heartbreaking. Yeah, and I saw them.
Fantastic. So much life to take you just being
Yeah, it just shows you how precious life is. And it's an amazing reminder to live and yeah, but I love their wonderful. Oh, well, I think that a lot because we brought our friends to Bridgeport. I also have friends in a lot, yeah.
I am supporting the one thing, once we latching into like Charlie's best friend, and once latching into his whatever, they all see somebody. So should we try to play them for them? We've all heard
The projector is right here. So this, I'll just make sure no one. Pardon me, sorry.
Hi, everyone. If you could take your seats, we're going to get ready for the next session. Thank you.
Okay, welcome back. So we come to our final session, which is in two parts. And the first part is a special presentation, and we are very, very lucky to have with us a special guest, Jamie Hastings, who is the Executive Director of the Arthur Miller Foundation, which is celebrating its 10th anniversary this year. Jamie?
Hi, everyone. My name is Jamie Hastings. It's so wonderful to be with you all today. I'm really honored to be taking part in the conference for the first time, and I have to thank Julia Bolis and Steve Marino for welcoming me with such open arms to represent the Arthur Miller Foundation, which is a 501c3 nonprofit grassroots organization. And I'd love to start by giving you a little bit of a history of the organization, then telling you a bit about our mission, programs, and impact, and sort of a little bit of a vision for the future. And in the midst of it, we'll play a really lovely video that captures the work that we do in New York City Public Schools. But first, I'll start at the beginning. I have been working with Rebecca Miller for the past 13 years. And Rebecca and I were actually just talking about that a few days ago, and it's wild to think that it's been that amount of time. And we started the organization about I'm going to go further back than when we began, because I think it's important to understand the inception of it and why it came to be. Rebecca Miller had been living abroad in Ireland, and when she moved back to New York City full time, she had sons of her own in New York City public schools, one of whom had an incredibly robust arts education that was inclusive of music and dance and theater and visual arts. And her other son was in a school with no arts education whatsoever, not one arts course. And so she thought, that's curious. We are the theater capital of the US, arguably the world. How are our children not receiving a dedicated theater education as a part of their academic curriculum? And when she started looking into it more and more, we learned that only 10% of schools in New York City at that time had a dedicated theater teacher or theater program. So according to Rebecca, Arthur had formed the foundation in name prior to his death, but left behind a very vague mandate and said, if and when the time is right for one of my children to activate the foundation in my name that could help engage young people in the arts in some way, I'd love for you to be able to do that. And so Rebecca said, I think now is the time to activate this foundation and really think about how we can support theater education in public schools. And so the Arthur Miller Foundation was born. And I'm gonna just kind of move us along here. This is one of Arthur's great quotes. The mission of the theater, after all, is to change, to raise the consciousness of people to their human possibilities. And that was our hope in creating the foundation, that this would actually come to fruition for students across all of New York City. So this is our mission. It's all about increasing access so that more and more students are able to experience theater education as a right and not a privilege, and not necessarily with the end goal of students going into the arts. If that is a byproduct, we think that's wonderful. But ultimately, the hope is that we're creating the next generation of future leaders who are empathetic and thoughtful and critical thinkers and collaborative and creative and go into all fields of human endeavor. And so that is why it's so important to support theater teachers and give them tools and resources that they need to succeed so that they can build lasting, sustainable theater programs that will ultimately impact students for years to come and are not just a flash in the pan, but have real staying power so that once a theater program begins at a school, a student can come to know that that's going to exist day after day and week after week and year after year, and create a really safe, welcoming, and what we like to call brave space in a school community. So the way that we decided to tackle this mission was through two different programs. This is our program that was actually created second, but it's called the Arthur Miller Foundation Scholars Program, and it's in partnership with the City College of New York's Graduate Program in Educational Theater. And the idea behind the Scholars Program is to both increase and diversify the pipeline of theater educators coming into the New York City public school system so that we are opening our arms to anyone who wants to come into the field of theater education and breaking down financial barriers to entry in order to become a certified theater teacher. So what we provide are 50% tuition scholarships for folks to go back to school and earn their MS Ed degree and theater certification. Additionally, our scholars are invited to our networking events to become part of the Arthur Miller Foundation theater education community. We connect them with the director of theater for New York City Public Schools and make sure that they have support once they've graduated from the program in educational theater at City College and are ready to tackle full-time theater teaching positions in the public school system. And I'll show you a little bit of impact in a little while in terms of how many scholars we've supported to date. But the second program is our Fellows Program. So once folks receive their MS Ed degree in theater education and their state certification, we want to give them all of the tools that they need to build a really robust theater program. Because something that was happening in the early years is that we were noticing principals were going so far as to hire a theater teacher. But then if they weren't seeing a full-scale production on their elementary, middle, or high school stage by the end of the first semester or the end of the first year, they'd say, well, that was a bust, we tried. And oftentimes they would excess the theater teacher or the program or both, sometimes not realizing that it takes time to build the foundation of a theater program. And it's not enough to just pay a teacher's salary and expect a theater program to blossom out of thin air. Teachers need tools and resources to build these programs. And so that's where we came in. We didn't want to recreate the wheel, but we said, how can we fill a void? And how can we make a lasting impact? And how can we join together with the existing theater education community, not coming in and saying the Arthur Miller Foundation is going to tell you the one right way to teach theater, but rather how do we galvanize like-minded organizations and bring together the incredible people doing the incredible work in theater education that's already been happening all of these years. So that's how our Fellows Program was born. And I'll just kind of quickly review the 4 buckets of support that we offer in our Fellows Program, because it paints a really beautiful picture of the type of support that our teachers are getting. The very first and the bedrock of the program is mentorship. We believe that every teacher needs a good mentor, and we came to learn that new teachers in New York City Public Schools were given a mentor, but often it wasn't content specific. So they could be given a math teacher as their mentor. And it's wonderful for them to tell them where the cafeteria is or where the copy room is or what to expect at faculty meetings, but they're not going to really be able to dive deep with our theater teachers in terms of content. And so our mentors are either retired theater teachers or teaching artists, but people who specifically have hands-on classroom experience in a theater class, who can work with our fellows to help plan the arc of their year, to think about unit planning and lesson planning and curriculum mapping and culturally responsive teaching, recognizing that an elementary school theater class in Staten Island is going to look very different from a high school theater class in the Bronx. And because we support teachers in all 5 boroughs at all grade levels, they need a mentor who can work with them to help shape a curriculum that makes the most sense for their specific student body and school community. So the mentorship is the bedrock of the program. And with that, we then provide all of these other resources that the mentor helps us to craft for the teachers. Our cultural partner residencies, our theater residencies, are partnerships with 8 different cultural organizations that have their own extraordinary theater education programs in New York City Public Schools. And I'm actually going to skip ahead so you can see who those folks are. Here they are. These are our cultural partner organizations. And so we allow each of our year 1 teachers to select a cultural partner that doesn't necessarily share the same strengths that they do. Because our theater teachers come into this from all different backgrounds, we say, identify your own strengths, and then don't pick a cultural partner organization that is an expert in what you already do well. Choose a cultural partner organization on a topic that you might not be expert in teaching yet, and then that way our students are receiving a much more well-rounded theater education, and the teacher is actually getting some level of professional development. So we allow all of our year 1 fellows to select an 8 to 10 week cultural partnership residency with one of those organizations, and it really helps them to flesh out their curriculum in a robust way. And then just to finish up this part really quickly, we provide classroom resources to all of our theater teachers to build out their classroom libraries and give them rehearsal cubes and pipe and drape sets and things that will actually build out a theater classroom and make the physical space come alive for them. We also provide theater tickets so students can see live professional theater in their own backyard. And then finally, professional development, ongoing workshops and events to really create a community of theater educators, which didn't exist in New York City prior to the Arthur Miller Foundation doing this work. So we started in New York in the 2015-16 school year, and we were supporting 15 teachers. And we've now grown, as Steve mentioned, we're in our 10th year of partnership with New York City Public Schools. And we are supporting 119, I believe, theater teachers in New York City across all 5 boroughs who are reaching around 60,000 students. And so we decided, okay, this model is working. 91% of the folks who cycle through all 3 years of our program, because it's a 3-year program, have gone on to create sustainable theater programs in their schools. So we know that the resources that we're giving them are leading to staying power for these theater teachers and these theater programs. And we said, we'd like to take this program model and bring it elsewhere. And the very first place that we thought to bring it, of course, was Connecticut, a state that was near and dear to Arthur Miller, to Rebecca Miller, to many of our board members, and to so many people who really wanted to see theater education flourish in a new geographic region with close proximity to New York City that had a deep need. And so we wound up partnering at first about 3 years ago, 2 to 3 years ago, in Bridgeport Public Schools. And prior to us coming to Bridgeport, there had only been a theater teacher there since the pandemic, and it turned out that it was a Arthur Miller Fellow who had been teaching in New York City, and she relocated, and there was a music position at an elementary school in Bridgeport, and she asked the principal, can I actually take this arts education spot and teach theater instead of music? And because she was so dynamic and wonderful, the principal said, all right, we'll take a chance. So she was the first ever theater teacher in the district of Bridgeport. And now we're continuing to slowly build up our cohort of Bridgeport fellows. And now this year is the first year that we are partnering with Norwalk Public Schools so that we can build out a Fairfield County cohort of fellows and continue building the work that was started in New York City in other areas. And Connecticut has been wonderfully receptive to this work. So I want to thank you all for being so open to all of this. Okay, and then the idea now is that we never want to bite off more than we can chew, and we only want to grow as quickly as we can bring in funding and also support these programs in a really robust and deep and meaningful way. So we're thinking about the future, and we're treating this as a marathon and not a sprint. Rebecca's big dream is to be able to bring these programs to LA public schools so that we can figure out how these programs work on the West Coast and receive support from folks out there as well. And we're eyeing a pilot program in partnership with the Educational Theater Association for the 25-6 school year. And then I've also identified these other regions that might make sense in time to go to because they have really strong rooted theater communities through regional theaters. But this is the vision, and the New York City and Connecticut remain the priority. So this is a little bit of the impact. I already talked about the New York City impact combined with Bridgeport and Norwalk. We're reaching 127 fellows. And over 63,000 students. We have 14 graduated scholars who have gone through the graduate program in educational theater. I'm sorry, I reversed that. 32 graduated and now 14 current scholars who are earning their certification. And so our impact is growing over time, and it's really organic. Every year that we bring on new scholars and fellows, we reach more and more students. And this just gives an overview of retention rates and how strong the retention rate is for our fellows. And then I'm not going to go into this in great depth, but Steve, I can share this with you, and if you'd like to share it with the folks in the Arthur Miller Society and at the Arthur Miller Writing Studio, we'd love for you to take a look at it in your own time. But we work with the Hunter School of Education's Urban Center for Assessment, Research, and Evaluation. Dr. Jess LeBlanc is an extraordinary research partner for us to talk about the benefit of theater education and help us come up with some really wonderful data points in terms of the benefits for students and for teachers. And I think I'm preaching to the choir when we talk about all of the benefits of theater education. And one anecdote that I'll share is that during the pandemic, when students were learning virtually, we heard from almost all of our fellows that there was a chance that these kids were not showing up in most of their classes, or at the very least, they were not turning on their cameras. But the vast majority of them were coming to theater class, they were coming on time, and they were turning on their cameras because it was a place where they had a voice, where they could make sense of the chaos in the world around them, and they felt like what they said and what they thought mattered. And for us, that was just such a telling time to be doing this critical work. We've gone through the cultural partners. Those are our. So I actually am gonna go back to the beginning. Actually, no, you know what? I'm gonna play our video. Here we go. So rather than me babbling on anymore about the programs and the work we do, I just kind of wanted to paint that picture for you. But I think what's really important is to hear about our work from the people who are impacted by it most, our teachers and our students. So this is a video that we crafted for our theater teacher honoree, Talia Jaime, for last year's gala, but it's still just as relevant this year. And without further ado, I'm going to play it for you. Here we go.
Be prepared for anything. Are you ready for anything?
Yes.
Clap your hands. Say your name. Say my name. How old are you? 17. How old am I?
It's so easy to identify what's unique about theater class. They're playing with each other. They haven't played with each other like that since they played on the playground. And all of a sudden, you get to a certain age and play is taken out of the classrooms. And so let's learn what it is to connect with somebody again. This innate thing in all of us that we have, it's our primal instinct to connect with people. Our lives are made up of moments, and as teachers, we get to be part of those moments. And then as theater teachers, we get to create magic out of nothing. After a few years of being a teaching artist in New York City, working in schools, I realized I want to be a classroom teacher. I want to make a bigger impact. So then that's when I went to City College and I got my MS in educational theaters. I tell our graduate students, you're going to have an impact on these students, and you might not know that day, right? But if I ask you to think back and tell me who was your first grade teacher or who was your theater teacher, I'm sure you remember. And that's Talia. With Shoba, she really helped me realize that I have a place in this field and I belong here, and I have something powerful to give my students because of my background as a woman, as a Latina, and as a lover and patron of the arts. The Arthur Miller Foundation really helps support you with the things that you need to be a stronger teacher, how to lesson plan, how to engage your students, how to set up your classroom so it is a theater space. So when Anne came in, it was always nice to have her in the room because I knew that she was there to support me.
A mentor is really just a friend and support and a guide. You need a sounding board. You need somebody to talk to. You need somebody to try ideas out on. You need somebody who can speak both the language of education and theater, and that's what the mentors do.
I felt valued as a fellow. I felt like somebody cared about what I was doing as an educator and they wanted to help me. I think what the foundation's doing that's so important is highlighting teachers like this, giving them public face so that people can see, themselves in leaders that are doing really solid work, showing the young people that the arts matter.
Every day is going to be a different story, a different adventure, a different ensemble piece. It's just really unique how creative we all are.
Now, I think that's what's great about theater for students, because it allows them to dream and imagine all the possibilities. And for one moment, to try them on.
Theater class is a character building class, and it's kind of like a break from their own lives. It was a break from my own life as well. To be another person, to see how it was to be another person. It's become like another support system.
I'm so fortunate to see the transformation that happens within the 4 years that I'm with them.
I walk around like on the outside. I'm not afraid to be out of my comfort zone. I'm more social, I'm more outspoken. I know how to make eye contact with people. God, I hated that.
Take more risks, be more myself, and I communicate more. Like everything about theater made me who I am today.
I was about to say, I guess I can be brave, but no. I have become brave. I'm just not as fearful as I was a couple years back.
Theater kids are the most authentic and the most vulnerable. That's what Miss Hyman always taught us theater was. To be yourself, to get silly, to be weird, to be vulnerable, to be sad, to be angry, happy, emotional. You can be anything that you want to be.
It's very clear that our theater students are very committed to the work. And so they have that trait in all aspects of their life. It's no longer just about theater. These are life skills, and we're just using theater to practice them.
The best thing about being an ensemble is reminding each other that we're worth just as much and just working together. It's like a hard dance routine. We finally get it. It's because we work as a team.
I think the magic that Talia has the ability to create is creating these spaces where her students might be engaged in the arts because it's fun, or they might be engaged in that theater classroom because it's a space where they can be themselves.
I love Miss Hyman. She's a teacher, but she's way more than that.
There's no words to describe her. She's everything. She's everything. I love her so much. And I know that I have a place to show people how talented I am because of her.
She takes over the room. That's what she does. But she doesn't take over the room for her. She takes over the room for them, which is so moving because she gets it.
But she is truly a role model for me. Just everything about her is just absolutely amazing. And she makes me want to be a person.
I feel like shared experiences, you hold on to them the most. And within what we do, everything is a shared experience. Them rehearsing together and overcoming a challenging scene or a monologue, and that time when they finally got to share that, they're always going to remember that. You're always going to remember taking a risk and getting on stage and doing it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you all for taking the time to watch that with us. But I think that they convey it a little bit better than I do. So just to wrap up in the last few minutes, take what you just saw with Talia and multiply it by 127, and then every year multiply it by more and more and more. And that's how many teachers and students are being impacted, and not just how many, but how deeply. And I think that that's the beauty of what theater education is able to do. It's a way to connect students with not only their teachers, but with themselves. And the reason that we focus on New York City public schools and why we started there is because Arthur Miller was a product of New York City public schools, who went to school in Harlem and in Brooklyn when the arts were an integrated part of an academic curriculum, and then slowly were stripped away. And so we're really trying to bring them back. And so this is our Artist and Industry Council, a group of individuals who support our work either in name or through actual advocacy efforts, and have lent their name to our cause. Then the final thing that I would like to mention is we would love for anyone who is interested to join us next Sunday for the Arthur Miller Foundation Honors Gala event. It is our 10th anniversary gala event, and it's going to be a really special one this year. We've been trying to figure out a way to engage Alicia Keys for a really long time because she, like Arthur, is a product of New York City public schools, and we couldn't quite figure out a way to do it until her Broadway musical Hell's Kitchen appeared. And that felt like the perfect way into Alicia and her team, and we approached her back in March about honoring her at our gala. Every year we present 3 awards. The first is the Arts and Culture Award that either goes to a corporate entity or an individual who has made a lasting impact on the landscape of arts and culture in our world. Then the second award is the Arthur Miller Foundation Legacy Award that goes to a playwright. Past playwright honorees have included Tony Kushner, Paula Vogel, Lynn Nottage, Christina Anderson, Martina Mayock, Dominique Morceau. And so we always love celebrating a playwright who's carving out their own legacy in the American theater the way that Arthur did. And then the third award is our AMF Excellence in Arts Education Award that up until now has gone to a New York City public school theater teacher that we have supported. However, this year, what's really exciting is that we are honoring Alicia Keys with the Arts and Culture Award, and we're actually able to honor her high school teacher, Aziza Miller, who plays keyboard in the orchestra of Hell's Kitchen, with the Excellence in Arts Education Award as a representation of all of our students, because Alicia and Aziza's story is the story of the Arthur Miller Foundation. And in Hell's Kitchen, there's a character, Miss Liza Jane, that Miss Aziza partially inspired. And then we're also honoring Christopher Diaz, who is Alicia Keys' writing partner for Hell's Kitchen. He's an extraordinary playwright in his own right, an Pulitzer Prize finalist. And he and Alicia worked on Hell's Kitchen together for 13 years, and he is the book writer, and also for 6 years was a New York City public school theater teacher. So Chris Diaz is just a wonderful human being and the absolute best person we could have thought to bestow the Legacy Award on this year. And the format for our event is that we're taking everyone to see the 3 p.m. matinee of Hell's Kitchen on Broadway, followed by an awards ceremony on the stage of the Shubert Theater that will culminate in a student performance by students from Alicia's public school alma mater. And then after that, we're taking everyone across the street for an after party at Sardi's, the iconic staple of the theater district for 100 years. So this is a link to our AMF Honors website, is that if anyone is interested in joining, please do. There are still tickets left, and the sponsorship levels are high because it is a fundraising event, but we're able to offer a special rate to any member of the Arthur Miller Society or the Arthur Miller Writing Studio. So there's contact information on the website, and if you'd like to attend, please reach out. I'm also happy to give anyone my contact information directly. You can reach out to me, and we'd love to have any of you there that would like to come and join us next Sunday for this really special event. But I just want to close in saying thank you for welcoming me with such open arms, for taking the time to listen to the work of the foundation. And it's just so wonderful that Arthur's legacy can be carried on in so many different and wonderful ways. We're just so grateful to be part of this journey of carrying his legacy forward. And I thank you all for your time, and I hope I get the chance to speak with you after this. Thank you, and have a great afternoon. Should I take any questions, or I don't want to kind of, yeah, I'm happy to, yeah, please. Yeah, yes, absolutely.
If they're graduating with a bachelor's in theater education, they would be eligible.
That's right. If they graduate with a bachelor's in education, English, theater, there are ways into the grad program. And Shobha, who you saw in the video, is the director of the graduate program in educational theater. So she reviews undergraduates' transcripts and basically takes a look at the qualifications for getting into the program, and then figures out actually how many credits they're able to come in with and what stream they're able to come in through. There are a bunch of different streams for the program depending upon someone's background, because it's also open to folks who had been professional performers or teaching artists and people who worked in community situations in jails, nursing homes, etc., but teaching theater and want to actually teach in a classroom. So there are lots of ways in. Thank you.
Take a 1 minute break, stretch, we're gonna gather our results.
This one? Yeah, I think we're just gonna leave the show for like a minute. But then as soon as the other part starts, we'll take it off. Okay.
Well, we understand. Yes, but. Yes, I know you do. I know you do.
So I teach at a big university in New Jersey, and my students really, it's Canadian University, Canadian. So I didn't know literature and is it, or is it theater practitioner? Because I was writing the head of our theater. So now I'm not an age. Okay. So then I work for the theater. Okay. Yeah. So elementary, yeah, because we have an undergraduate degree where you can teach theater to elementary. And how long is the program?
It varies. And both program, so
You can also
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Say that.
I have to practice, but I'll give you my contact.
So, do you typing or phone?
Whatever. I have my card right here. I work at it, so I'm happy to. So, why don't I have a vote? Let's do both. That way you have.
Yeah, so I just put up
Stand up and use.
I'm just doing Kamala. I was fighting for my niece here. You know what? That is a very worthy person to share this with. So you're Long Island.
Okay,
Those are my.
now we're really up to the final session before the food and drink in the library, which follows this, our reception. So we come to the actual final session. When we were organizing the program, we thought it would be appropriate to show another side to Arthur Miller, the writer. We want to give insight to Arthur Miller, the man and the friend and the neighbor to many in Roxbury. So we invited residents who will share their experiences with him. However, before I invite you to speak, we have a reading that Marla is going to do this by a renowned resident of Roxbury.
Thank you so much. Hi again, my name is Marla Truini. If I didn't meet you earlier, I live right here on South Street. I'm so grateful to live in this beautiful city, town. And when the town organized a memorial for Arthur Miller after he passed in 2005, another playwright in town, A.R. Gurney, known to many as Pete Gurney, was invited to speak. And unfortunately, his wife was having she was having her birthday, her 70th birthday. And unfortunately, because of that, they were not able to attend the memorial. And Mark Olivieri is a friend, and Paula, and somehow I was nominated to speak on Pete's behalf at the memorial, and was really quite an honor. I was very nervous because Arthur Miller, I loved his work. I was honored to meet him a few times myself. He was very supportive of the school where I worked, Westover School. And anyhow, I'm going to reread Pete Gurney's words to you today, and we'll have Pete's presence here with us too. So this was sent April 14th, 2005. Arthur Miller was a protean guy, so it's hard to pick him up by one particular handle. But I'm not sure that enough attention has been paid to his delicious sense of humor. Several of his plays have funny scenes, most notably those with the old furniture dealer in The Price. But for me, Miller's comic instincts showed up most engagingly in real life. Over drinks, at the dinner table, driving down to New York, between sets on the tennis court, his eyes would twinkle and out would come some ironic observation or extended anecdote which would lead to a wry comic payoff. Miller is often associated with Ibsen for his solid craftsmanship and moral sensibility, and sometimes with Bellow for his ethnic awareness and breadth of vision. Yet, as I remember him personally, I'm more often reminded of Mark Twain. And it's signed A.R. Gurney, neighbor and fellow playwright.
So we're going to do this as sort of an open mic. So our first resident, Rose.
Hi, my name is Rose Loya. Is this on?
Yeah, so close, just like
Close. I've worked at the post office for 29 years, so had the honor of being part of his life, because he let us all be a part of his life in the public for 9 years. And when I first met him in the lobby of the post office, I just looked up and I says, "Wow, you're tall." Very tall. But he was so extraordinary, but wanted to be ordinary. So that's the way I looked at him. I was aware of his works and what contributions he's made to our world. And I would just acknowledge him and say, "Hey, what's up? What's up, Mr. Miller? What can I get you today?" And he'd say, "Well," and his arms would be full of packages and envelopes, and because people always wanted a piece of him. They, reading his documents and plays and everything about him, and photographs that Inga had taken of the family and everything, because I knew her as well. And they would send him self-addressed envelopes with inadequate postage. So that's where I came in. Same thing with Pete Gurney. Pete Gurney, I was blessed. I know it's not about Pete, but they're writers, and I was blessed to see Pete every single day of my life until his passing, working here. So it's a very amazing place to be, and it's really not work. I've always said to them when they came in and said, they would say, "Oh, how are the boys?" I have 2 sons. And I said, "Well, they're doing well, and you are all raising me the best you could." And with every citizen in Roxbury, I think the fact that these people chose to live here in their extraordinariness just to be ordinary and left alone was massive. And I would encourage him to come back and continue to appease these people so they wouldn't drive here and seek him out, because unfortunately when some other writers moved in, they announced they lived next to Arthur Miller. Frank McCourt. Remember that? He's like, "Frank." I would give him the postage, and I also had the honor, it wasn't just always him and I, just in a room. And I didn't feel like, "Oh my God, this man is iconic. And it's just me and it's him. And we're talking and chatting about the weather and what'd you have for dinner? And oh, did you see the bobcat down, on top, whatever." And I would be able to catch his conversation with other people like you, or Marla lives here too. But I'm grateful that I knew at that moment, with his sense of humor and his kindness to this, postal worker. He didn't treat me less than. He actually would ask an opinion of what I thought of something. And I did write some of that down, and I have a journal in my drawer at work. It's going to be worth money someday. People keep telling me to get a ghostwriter. I'm like, oh, I don't know. But, and his wife was just as lovely as his silly, personality, because I thought he was silly, because I think I gave him permission to just be, just to release, and we had a lot of great private moments in that way. And, but when Inga came in, she's beautiful. Like, just to look at, just the way she moved. And I really didn't know much about her. I was like, I think she's a ballerina. I really did. But that's what my imagination was telling me. And then as she would come in, and I didn't understand this though, she would come in and buy the stamps. She'd buy coils of stamps, and she would use her checkbook. And I was like, holy Inga, I have never seen someone write out over 50,000 checks, like her number for checks. I just remember, the silly things we all remember, that she had written out so many checks over the decades with the same banking account. I was impressed. But the thing here is, she's buying coils of stamps and clearly not giving any to him. I mean, these are my little secrets. And now you all know. And I'm like, something's up here. So now I realize, because he was out in the field, and this I had to, writing his story, doing, getting the mail, everybody. Mail says so much about everyone. Lovely and different and just curious. And I was very curious about these tall figures. And Pete would do the same thing. Styron did the same thing. Robert Anderson, as I rattle off their names, I realized, wow, I've had experiences throughout my whole postal career. I worked for the government, and they don't know or realize how fun it is. So you all have to be sworn to secrecy to not tell the government. But I'm very fortunate, because there's a story with every single person, even the farmer and Arthur Miller, side by side in a community that he loved and raised his family. And it was an honor, and it still is, now that I live here, been here 10 years, but worked here for 29 years and got to experience the culture. And it is an experience being in Roxbury, and it's meek and quiet, And I think Frank learned that quite quickly. But that's, I can take any questions, or I can tell you what he drove. I can't tell you what he ate, but probably not. It's just basically.
Now we have special guest Carol Connery.
I get to channel my dad, and also I get to speak for Peter Riley, who's I'm sworn to, the minute I get out of here, tell everything about it. So my name is Carol Connery. My father wrote the book on the Peter Riley case, which probably would not have gotten to the success, guilty until proven innocent, would not have gotten to the success that it, the case would not have happened to the depth that Arthur Miller contributed to it. So just I'm trying to figure out how to even start, because again, such a dynamic and unique individual who just did not want to be in the limelight, considering everything he did. Here he's in Roxbury. There had been another, for the people who may or may not know about this, it's hard to kind of backtrack after all these years in terms of it's such a lengthy story, but Peter came home, found his mother murdered. He was then arrested by the police after 8.5 hours of interrogation, falsely confessed under the pretenses that he kept saying he wouldn't remember anything, so forth, that he didn't remember doing it, but if he trusted the police, so forth and so on, and if they said that he did it, then he must have done it. Then went on to hire a beautiful, wonderful person, but she, the first case, and I apologize, but there's a point to this whole story. I'll probably get to the point in a moment here. And so the point is that he got convicted, and the town of Canaan or Falls Village, Connecticut, rallied around him and came to his defense and was doing the bake sales and doing everything else. And Arthur Miller here in Roxbury started getting more and more interested in the case. And at that time, just backtracking a little bit, Peter was a high school friend of mine. Oh, remember that. We are now knowing each other for 51 years and have speak every single day now, and it's phenomenal. But anyway, so Arthur starts investigating or starts looking into, and I think just couldn't sit back any longer, and he tried to find out who were the people most involved in the case, and he got very involved in it. And my father, who was at the time, I introduced him to Peter, and my father was writing a book, and I know it's not about my dad here, but I swear he's channeling me right now, was writing a book, another book. He's also an author. And Peter comes to dinner, and my father just changes at that dinner his relationship and saying, Peter, I'm going to prove if you did it, I'm going to prove you're guilty. If you didn't do it, I'm going to prove you're not guilty, and we're going to write the book together. Here's 50%. You agree to this? And he said, absolutely, with absolute conviction. So that's where Arthur Miller just calls up my dad and says, I hear that you're involved with the Peter Riley case. And it just grew from there. And Arthur Miller was unbelievable, the amount of people he brought in. He would just say, what else do you need? 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 And he brought in all these amazing people that changed the whole trajectory of the case. And we would have lunches together. I took time off from college to help my dad and to be there for Peter, and to there was a movie that was being made from the whole thing, which Peter with Arthur Miller was somewhat involved in, but he was always on the outskirts of it, in quietness of not wanting to have any limelight. It was about Peter. It was about injustice. It was about just false confessions and everything that went with that. And he would just be so quiet. I remember it at times. And then when he spoke, everybody listened. We just listened to what he had to say. And as I said, he had such great connections. And it's never for a split second about him. It was absolutely about Peter and the case and justice. And he never got political about it. He was just calm, cool, collected, and respectful of the process. And for the people, again, who are not that familiar with the case, it's still so timely now. And as I said, just talking about, would he know me from a hole in the wall at this point? Probably yes, but he was just such a dynamic figure. His presence, being in court, he didn't have to dedicate all this time. And I think his legacy has just continued on and continued on. I know I probably said way too much.
Yes, I just want to add one little bit. So, my father, Robert J. Wolf was my father. I'm Guy Wolf. I grew up in the Calder household. So, I remember back when what happened was somebody in Falls Village called Rufus Stillman, who was one of the gang,
Yeah,
the liberal
Richfield,
gang of
right.
Richfield County. And he called my dad, and then my dad called Arthur. So that whole thing started with this incredibly crazy thing that's happened to this kid up in Falls Village. So it went from Stillman to my father to, and it would have gone from my father to Sandy and Louisa, but they were in France. So it was, where do we find the money to get a lawyer for this guy? And Arthur knew the lawyer. So you know more about how this all happened, but I heard the telephone calls when I first.
Yeah, so it's so incredible what we were privileged to being able to be involved in here. Yeah.
Yeah, but Arthur was the sort of person that could not take a lie. He could not. The thing that the most important thing to say about the luck of being around stuff. So if I'm 74, I would say somewhere between 54, 55, 56, 57, somewhere in there. So Sandy Calder was a very playful person. Louisa was kind of a dark horse. So with Arthur loved to be playful, but he also had a dark side. So the thing was he really had a great time at the Calder house. And he was completely free there because there was nothing about being somebody famous if you're around Sandy Calder, you know what I mean? So the household was very playful. But I do remember one night when he got very, very deep into the whole thing of being brought up before McCarthy. So that was a huge deal for him. And as a little boy, I just thought, this man's been attacked by somebody. He talked about it like it was, being pummeled. So, I mean, as far as being a child growing up with him, he was very playful, but the McCarthy thing was a very, very big deal for his lifetime.
I was going to say, Peter Riley would have been here, but he had some minor surgery done a few days ago, so he encouraged me to make sure he wanted to say he really wanted to be here.
Very gentle human being.
Yes. What else?
Mark, I believe, Mark Oliveri.
Appropriate punctuation. Yeah.
I made a few notes here because I'm not too polished.
Mike's your mouth.
Okay. I was a neighbor of Arthur's from 1981 till he died. I was a woodworker. I am a woodworker. Arthur was a woodworker. So my relationship with him was in that craft. And so he was my age then. I was 30, something like that. He was into Eric Sloan's tools and traditional woodworking, and I was a hotshot young guy with some Japanese pull saws and hollow ground chisels. I thought that was why he. Anyway, if he needed a board planed or something, I had a surface planer. And so anyway, I had a relationship with him as a woodworker. It's been a long day. Keep stories short. The most important thing that I remember with that household was that if you caught it at a quiet moment and you go there and you got some attention, he and Inga and family, whoever would be there, these are accomplished people. I was a lot younger. When they would ask you, Mark, what are you doing? What's up? It was a deep question. It wasn't what's up. It was basically what we've heard about all day. What are you doing that can improve the human condition? That's what I heard. I don't think I heard those words. Although I may have heard those words, but that's what I was hearing from. It was so prevalent that this commitment to making a difference and making what you do every day relevant to something important. We have moved his writing studio from his property. Rebecca hired me and my son and Dave Miller, his cousin, as counsel to take the studio off the property at the time of sale and find out what we're going to do with it. So this was in April 2019, a long time ago, 6 years ago or 7 maybe. And it's a very rainy spring, terrible time, but there's a closing on the house. We had to move this building. They weren't good days. They were days in the mud. Basically what we did was we put 2 girders under the building, which we had jacked up. Put holes in the foundation, put these 2 girders under there, which would act like skis. And over the mud, we pulled the building with ropes and rigging and just wallowing in mud. Got it down to the road and put it on one of those big wide load trailers and trucked it down to the town hall here, where they have let us keep it for these years. And we have a spot for it here in the back of the library. And you've seen pictures of the building. It's, I'm sure you've all seen some of it now in slides. It's a little building, 14 by 22. Its importance is that it was the place where Arthur worked. I put 3 words together for this. He sat in there and he observed, he analyzed and reflected, and then he sought to influence the world through his work. So it's an important little place. It's a funny little building, but we want it. We want to preserve it. We want to keep it here. So we're raising money to do that. And we're 40% into our goal of $1 million. If you know of people who could help us, we have some very generous people here who have helped us. We need that 60% help to get to phase 1 of getting this building moved over here, so that when someone comes in here with and the little child looks out and sees this little building and says, "What's that goofy little building out there?" The parents can say, "That's the building where there's a man who asked the question, 'What are you doing? What's up?'"
That was wonderful. That was wonderful. Thank you. What a way to end. What a way to end. So it's been a great day. Really good. Mary. Oh, Mary, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Mine was at work. So I usually can pronounce things and be loud enough for everybody, but I, like everybody else, love books. It's part of my life, part of my family. I am Mary Terrell. I own Canfield Corner Pharmacy in Woodbury, so a lot of you know me from there. I grew up in that store quite literally because my mother, Vera, who a lot of people knew, owned the store before me. And she and Arthur were very, very, very good friends. I don't know if it was because she had grown up in New York and lived in New York a long time, or that he came for his New York Times every day and it gave them something to talk about. And they had very philosophical discussions at the soda fountain. So I brought my little goodies too. My first one is the soda fountain. It's not here anymore. It's moved to a different location, our store. We're trying to get it reopened. Health districts caused all kinds of hassles, but this is a picture that Inga took of our store. It's got Arthur, my brother Paul, and my mother in it, doing what they did. They would sit at the soda fountain and talk and visit. And this one, what's really interesting about this picture is it says on it, to Vera, a good listener, and all the best after the blaze, Arthur Miller, 7/25/1998. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. This is a replacement picture that Arthur gave us because the first one we had was destroyed in our fire. And there was like 3/4 of it left, but I went to Arthur one day and I said, Arthur, look at my photo. My photo's gone. I don't know what to do. My photo's gone. He said, well, we'll have to take care of that. We'll get and get make a new one. So this was our new one. And as apropos for Arthur, Mr. Plain, when he's in the country, we put it in this really nondescript, really cheesy picture frame that was an 8x10 easy hang frame for certificates, but made in the US at least. So I brought that, I keep it at the store, I hide it away, I don't show it to everybody. It's one of my favorite things that I have. But speaking of being in the country, that is to me what Arthur was. Arthur in the country. He was not just a person who wrote plays, and he and Inga worked on some great books. In the Country was one of them, in Russia and in China, in Chinese Encounters. This is one of my favorites. It has several pictures of my store in it, inside and outside. And it holds great value because Arthur was sort of a mentor to all of us kids who grew up there and who got the same kind of questions of, what did you do today? What's going on? And we didn't always understand how important it was to him of what was happening in our lives. So when it came time for me to go to pharmacy school, after all those years of listening to everybody and looking at these people that he had, there's a picture at the soda fountain, these people that he had embraced as his friends and neighbors, all of them. He wrote a thing about pharmacies in here. And I just want to read it because I used this same quote to start my term paper in pharmacy school for the class we had to take of history and pharmacy. And the only thing you had to do was write a term paper. But you couldn't go get a term paper from anybody else. And I had to have something that they knew was not written by somebody else. So I went, okay, what am I going to do? Oh, God. I grew up in this pharmacy. I know a lot about this pharmacy. But we never wrote any of it down. And great things happened in this pharmacy. So how do I do this? So I started out with this, which is births, deaths, ripe scandals, secret ailments, imminent separations, reconciliations, bankruptcies, candidates for office, building plans, engagements, new and sundered friendship, bee stings, news of deer influxes, successful and failed operations, petitions to sign, election predictions, juvenile kleptomania, dawn thefts of newspapers by adults, waxing and waning of grudges, falling of wombs, stomachs, and arches, dying at sea and at war, rescues from abandoned mine shafts, evidence of mafia infiltrating, much irony, common sense, and astonishment. In short, the drugstore. Arthur encompassed my life. I did write the paper. I did fortunately get a very good grade. I got 100. So I got 100. And my family was quite happy that I had finally gotten everything written down and put things from our history, because our store dates from 1867. So it's It's old. And so I love that he embraced us, the common person, the neighbors, the friends, the people who helped him in everyday life. Like the day he drove his Range Rover to the store and it died, and he didn't know what to do, and we had to push it out of the middle of the road. The day he came in a holy sweater with no elbows left in it, and my mother threatened him, "Arthur, you're too important to wear that sweater in public." And I said, Mom, it's his sweater, let him wear it. He goes, "Here, it's my sweater, and I'll wear what I want." And I love this sweater. Well, it had massive holes. She says, "Take it off. It's not going home with you. That sweater's staying here. I'm going to fix it." And he said, "No, Vera, no, it's my sweater. I like it. I want it like it is. I like the elbows gone. It's homey. I liked it. Take it off." Arthur did not win. He did not leave the store. But my mom dutifully sat at night with her leather patches and her little, hard to see, stitching those patches onto her elbows because it went along with his stature, even if it was for here in the country. So he was a good friend to so many of us and different relationship with every one of us. My brother had an article written by Arthur about him. My brother's he's this wild, crazy mountain kind of guy you can see in the picture, always with a beard and mustache, wild hair. And he hunts and fishes and does all those kinds of things. He was a stonemason. Arthur had a problem with beavers. And they kept coming to the pond and everything, causing all kinds of ruckuses. So finally he said, "Paul, you've got to come do something. These beavers have to go." And Paul goes, "It's not season. I can't do anything about this." "I don't care. They have to go." He says, "When it's time, Arthur, I'll come up and we'll take care of it." So he did. He went up and he took care of it. Arthur wrote an article that was published called Beavers that is about my brother, and I love being able to read that. My sister didn't fare as well. She moved away, so she wasn't here enough to get an article mentioned. I did a little one, very little one. When I had my son, who's 30 now, we wanted to go into the theater district, and we kept saying to my son, "You can't go till you can walk everywhere for the whole day. I'm not going to carry you. I'm not taking a carriage. I'm not doing anything." So for his 9th birthday, which is when I finally decided maybe he's ready, we went off to the city. We had to have one of those Sabret's hot dogs at the cart, and we went to the theater. Arthur wrote about us in the beginning of one of his articles for the New York Times that was about the demise of the theater. And so it's so great that it comes back to this. He believed the theater needed to survive, and there was a real reason for it to be there, and it was in his heart. And so he started out the article saying, "My pharmacist took her young son to the city to go to the theater." And I thought, wow, he arrived. We went to New York and somebody noticed it. So it was a country bumpkin. Yeah, the country bumpkins went to the city. But it was fun, and we had a great time. And I always enjoyed Halloween, which is so great at this time of the year because as kids, my mom would load us up in the car after the store closed, and we'd go out trick-or-treating. And we went to Roxbury, and we would go to Sandy Calder's, and we would sit and play with all the little mobiles and things. And Louisa would make us all have a little glass of wine because the children need it. And my mom goes, "Yeah, the sugar they've eaten, they could use that." But my mom trick-or-treated with a coffee mug. And she didn't drink coffee after noon. But we trick-or-treated at everybody's house. We went to Bill Styron's, and we always went to Miller's, and if they were home. And my mom still trick-or-treated with her mug at everyone. So somebody's missing a lamp at the end of their driveway because Mom was driving out after she'd been trick-or-treating. But they're all great stories, mostly from my childhood. But I grew up with such great influences from such wonderful people that are a part of the community. And Arthur was one of them. And I loved Inga too, but that's another day, another story. She probably
Thank you. That was wonderful. That was wonderful. So we come to the end, and I want to thank you There's some people that we need to thank before we come to the reception in the library. Of course, all our wonderful panelists today, both those who are here and those who are on other continents, which is wonderful. Of course, the board of the Arthur Miller Writing Studio, Inc., and the program committee of the Arthur Miller Studio Writing. Everyone was just wonderful and here to help, and the officers of the Arthur Miller Society. And I have that special recognition to two people. Teresa, in the librarian, who, and I would say, no is not in her vocabulary. It's just not. And she'll be embarrassed, but Julia Bolus, the Arthur Miller Trust. Julia has the amazing capacity to keep everything and all of us together, which is just a gift. So thank you very much, and please come to the library for some liquid refreshments. Thank you very much.